We have never seen anything quite like it. The public reaction to what's happening in Ukraine right now, I've never seen it in my entire career, and neither have you. It's truly unprecedented. I've been a foreign correspondent in Syria. I've been to Congo when an ammunition depot exploded. I've met refugees from all over the world, from Sudan, been to Palestine, but I've never seen the kind of solidarity that we've seen around Ukraine. People are booking out empty Airbnbs right now so that they can donate money to people in Ukraine. We see people from across Europe that are opening up their spare bedrooms and their homes to welcome people from Ukraine. We've even seen this year a Guinness World Record for the most money ever donated through an online campaign in a 1-week period. It was like 62 million British pounds. Unprecedented, the amount of global solidarity and the amount people care. And I think the reason for that is storytelling, right? It's good storytelling that gets people behind things, that brings people together. But it's also bad storytelling that can be quite dividing and divisive.
This is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
These are prosperous middle-class people. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
What could be a difference here from other conflicts, that could seem very far away, in Africa or Middle East or whatever. I mean, these are Europeans that we're seeing being killed.
This isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
How is that him choosing his words carefully? Like, what was he gonna say if he wasn't relatively white? It's crazy, but this is what storytelling does, right? It has amazing potential, and everybody who's in this room at Devex World, we're all in the business of trying to get people to care, trying to get people to care about climate change, trying to get people to care about women's rights, trying to get people to care so that we can take action. The thing is, traditional media massively lacks diversity, right? They might have a sense of credibility, but they're not very diverse. And because of that lack of diversity, they don't really know what's going on, right? They can't really connect with a refugee story in a country that they've never experienced or traveled to or even met somebody from. The other major issue with traditional media, it's a bit like these guys, and I respect you and your job, but this is really expensive, right? Traditional video and communication is incredibly expensive, and frankly, it can be a little bit fake, right? It can be a bit contrived. It sometimes doesn't feel real. I learned this the hard way. I've been a foreign correspondent for 11 years, and I traveled to Syria to cover the Syrian civil war. I was smuggled in with a group of surgeons that were building a hospital. And I stayed at this guy's house. I'm on the back of his motorbike. His name is Nihad. He rode me to work every day. We had an amazing time together. Since I left Syria, Nihad died, and so did everybody who I got close to. The translators who I worked with, the friends that I had, the nurses and doctors that I met. And I realized that I had no desire ever to travel to a war zone again. I didn't want to cover a conflict, but there was a way that we could empower communities to tell their own stories on the ground with mobile devices, and we could curate that, we could collect that, and we could fact check it and verify. And you're about to have a panel coming up after me where we're gonna look at disinformation and how we make sure we fight against it. So I shared this idea on stages like this around the world. I said, we can do this. We can diversify the media landscape by empowering people to tell their own stories. This is what the political editor of the BBC said to me.
Yeah, but this isn't journalism. I would die rather than do it. I don't want to watch it either. Curating selfies isn't journalism.
Curating selfies isn't journalism. Today, the president of Ukraine is giving us videos with selfie videos. If this isn't journalism, I don't know what the fuck is. So I'm gonna give you 7 quick tips, 7 quick ideas about how you can do this, how you can empower communities to tell stories, and I'm gonna do it in 5 minutes and 57 seconds, so run with me. First is coming up with a storytelling concept. right? You've got to have a concept. And that concept cannot focus on advertising. It must be constructive. It must be solutions orientated. Here's a problem in society, and here's people making it better. My generation have had fear-mongering and terrorism piped into our phones from the day we were born. We don't want to watch it. We don't want to share it. We want stories of hope. Secondly, you need to give people storytelling tools. Platforms like Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube and TikTok, they all amplify your story, but they don't tell you how to tell a good story. In fact, if I asked anyone in this room right now, and we've got Marcom staff and communication staff, to go viral with a video on their phone right now, you would struggle to do it without maybe flossing or something. So you need to give people tools, and you can give people tools through their mobile camera. For example, little selfie lenses. I pledge to save water by doing X, Y, and Z. And you can give that to somebody, and you can curate that into a piece of content. You can collect that and create a piece of content. Or maybe you can do something around climate change, like where you can create an entire world in this room, like here, right? And you could tell a story. And imagine a kid in Kenya being able to create a really powerful story using their mobile camera simply because you provided them with tools on the social media platforms that they already use, on Instagram, on Snapchat, on all these platforms. So that's the second idea, is give them toolkits. I first learned this when I was in India. I was working with rape survivors, and in India, you can't show the faces of rape survivors in the media, even if they want to be identified. They get alienated from their communities, they get thrown out of their societies. We were able to use face filters to hide the identities of rape survivors while empowering them to tell their stories.
5 years old when it happened.
Look at these striking images. They're people wearing virtual face masks on Snapchat. Victims of sexual abuse in India are using them to remain anonymous so they can tell their harrowing stories.
So look beyond the gimmicks, look beyond all the childish face filters and flower crowns, and see that there are powerful tools that we can use to tell amazing developmental stories. We were working with World Vision International for World Food Day, and we were able to create a lens where people had to make impossible decisions around food. Oh gosh. Yikes.
This is a really tough one.
I'm gonna keep moving. And you soon realize that when a woman in a refugee camp in Afghanistan has to make a decision between feeding her family and giving up her daughter to early child marriage, suddenly if you understand the context, if you're immersed in that story, you start to empathize and understand. So my first tip was concept. My second tip was giving toolkits. The third tip is training, right? Once you've got these toolkits, you gotta train communities how to tell stories. We were working with Plan International. During COVID, they wanted to create 43 videos in 43 countries entirely by kids themselves. Selfie storytelling, mobile journalism, Mojo.
Hello. Mom. Hi.
Hi, namaste. Hello.
China, Guatemala, Liberia,
Indonesia.
Malawi. Climate change will impact my life and yours.
We are here.
Estamos aprendiendo a empoderarnos. Junto con Plan Internacional.
We change things in our community for better.
Thanks for watching my story.
And how much did that cost in terms of camera equipment and film crews and gear? Nothing. Just people with phones telling their stories. Of course, you do need to edit that content, right? And you understand what platforms you're editing for. So when that content comes back, my fourth tip is you need to edit it for the right platforms. In fact, this month, we edited this piece, and it was for some of the coverage we did around World Refugee Day. And this is a young Syrian who's living in Germany. But if you edit it in a way that's edgy and relatable, and sometimes a little bit funny, you can reach large audiences. This reached 6 million people organically on TikTok.
One thing people get wrong about refugees. They think we were always poor, but that's not true. My name is Hussam, and my story is kind of crazy. Well, I'm from Syria. My father owned...
And I love those kinds of stories because it reminds you that Hussam has more in common with you than he has apart. He also watches Game of Thrones and House of Cards. He is far more like you than he is not. And that's the kind of refugee stories we need to be telling when you create amazing content. The fifth point is content distribution, right? Understand what platforms you're optimizing for and create content specifically for that. If you're optimizing for Snapchat or Facebook, the opening 3 seconds have to be amazing. You need to grab people's attention. The end of the video has to end with a question, so you create a conversation at the end. We created this video with this kid named Job. I've been working with him since he was about 11 years old. He's a South Sudanese refugee. He managed to create a video that got 137,000 people to click through to the World Vision website for donations.
I am Job, a mobile journalist and a South Sudanese refugee living in Bidibidi refugee settlement. Did you know that COVID-19 increased teenage pregnancy in my community?
Right, surprising story. How did COVID-19 increase teenage pregnancies in my community? And finally, these AR lenses, point 6, create effects that your audience can use. So your audience then watch the story, then they open their camera, and they're inspired to do something. By 2025, 75% of the world's population will use augmented reality on a regular basis. How do you get people to care about our planet? Don't just watch, play.
I think my bee died.
And when it all comes together, it's a beautiful thing. You basically give people camera tools, you give them to marginalized communities, they create content, and in that content, you distribute more camera tools. These are those 7 steps. Take a picture of the slide, it's the important one. Otherwise, I'll tweet about it later. And this has worked. I'm not just talking out of my ass. We've got 10 shows on social media. We've got 5 million subscribers. We've got 70% of them are Gen Z. We've trained 20,000 people. My company started the pandemic with 2 staff, just my wife and I. We're now 100 full-time people around the world. So this model works. We've worked with partners all over the world. Empower communities to tell their own stories, and you can create amazing content. I'm wearing a computer on my face. This is a computer. I tell stories through my eyes as well. If you want to learn more about that, come to my workshop at 2:30. Thanks so much, everybody.